good morning. Thank you guys for joining us, even with traffic and our sparse crowd, but make it happen. So the idea of today's seminar is we've brought you the experts to teach you the process of leasing or owning a new building and how does that start. And so we're going to start off with Matt Main, who's our CPA, and then he'll hand off to Mel Trissel, who's a banker, and Elena Boren is our broker. Pascal Autry is the architect, and then myself, Dean Morongon's your GC, and we're going to just real quick, each person has about 5 minutes, and we're going to take you through what that looks like, how you have to get everything in order to start the project. Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll just kind of introduce myself. I've been practicing since 2000. I graduated college in 2006 and been licensed since 2008. Got a master's, all the fun stuff. I teach CPA review for Becker, which is the largest CPA review course, as well as a weed accounting business and a CPA firm. So all of that being said, my goal is to leave you with one thing you didn't know before. So I didn't prepare a PowerPoint because 5 minutes is easy. I can talk BS all day. Basically, I put myself in the shoes of, hey, do I have a prospective client or a current client that's asking me these questions? And I said, well, if I had 5 minutes, what would I teach them in 5 minutes? So I kind of got a little bullet point list based upon what we heard in the email, and it's geared around the build versus leasing. So I'm not a big fan of leasing if you can afford to build, just plain and simple. Basically, a lease, you're paying somebody else's rent, their mortgage payment, and you're not getting any equity in the asset. Unless you have a lease to own, which commercial building, that's not going to happen. So leasing benefits, you get your normal tax write-offs. We're not going to go into that. My goal is to keep you at 50,000 feet, not dive into the weeds. So building, you've got the buy-build decision. If you buy a pre-existing building, it's already there. You're probably going to have some repairs and maintenance you're going to have to put into the building, some improvements. And just the headaches of owning a pre-existing building versus building one to specs or to custom build. Depending on the size of it, it's going to be an expensive project. The next piece I've got for you is financial statements. A lot of people run from that word, but if you're ever going to buy a building or even lease a building, you're going to have to turn over financial statements to either a banker or a prospective lessor. As the leasee, they want to know you can pay their rent. They're not going to put you into a building that you're going to default on after a year or two. So that decision in general is a huge one, but in addition to just the financial statement, you're going to want to run projections and see, hey, where is this building going to be in 5 years? How's our cash flow going to look? That's the word everybody wants. Real estate investing or buying, building is going to be a cash flow decision. You're not going to get into a project that you're going to sink tons of cash in and not get a payback. So the term payback means how long it's going to take you to recoup your investment. If you don't know that before you get into a project, then you're already way behind the 8 ball. So if you can't figure your cash flow out quickly, you dive into a project you're not going to get out of. After you got that, I always tell people, set up an LLC for the property. LLC ownership can be single owner, multi-owner partnership, however you want to do it. I always stray people away from putting them in any kind of corporation because the pass-through losses don't accumulate as well. You're stuck at the corporate level 90% of the time in rental property because you don't have the equity to write off a loss. So that's as detailed as I'm going to get. 3 letters to write down on your piece of paper. After you decide you're going to set up the LLC, you're obviously going to take everything to the banker, let them tell you, hey, we can fund this project, we can't fund the project, you need to come up with another investor, we need more collateral. You go down the list, he'll dive into that. After that piece of it, once you buy the building, once you build the building, write down CSS. That's going to be your cost segregation study. Very key, very vital, especially on a pre-existing building, so that you can maximize your tax benefits of owning a property. The last piece I've got for you is make sure you've got reserves for the unexpected. That's the number one thing rental companies, if you're owning and leasing it out, you don't have cash reserves to pay for repairs if the HVAC units go down $30,000 in a lot of buildings to way beyond that. So bankers like to lend if you've got collateral, but if they've already lended on that building, they're not as apt to give you more money if you don't have further collateral to give them in return. So I think that's it in a nutshell. The tax benefits in general of owning property are massive. The biggest issue you run into is what's called passive losses, and those aren't as eligible to expense, to get a benefit from. So you have to be cautious and carefully tread when somebody tells you renting a property or owning a property is going to be a huge tax benefit if you're not in that property yourself. So, other than that, that's short questions. I think we have a Q&A at the end. Okay.
Anyone have any questions?
Hey, Matt, we have clients that come in and refinance buildings and pull cash out of it.
Yep.
And stick in their pocket, or they might use it for equity in another project. If it's a distribution or whatever the term is that are those funds taxable?
It all depends on the equity you have in that business. So if you do a cash back and you're living off of the loan that you've already taken out on that building, it's taxable. That's the easiest way to say it. So if you do a cash back refi and you don't have $30,000 or $100,000 that you put into that building, then you've got no basis to pull it back out. So it becomes a taxable event. It's all in the equity section, balance sheet and tax return. If you're positive, you can cash back refi. If you're negative, it's going to be a capital gain to you.
Okay.
So that's a good question. Get asked it a lot.
Well, you know, they'll say the rich keep getting richer, and that's one of the things they do.
Yeah.
They'll take an income producing office building, say they have great equity in it, they lever it up again and pull that cash out.
Yeah, as long as you've got the equity, you're good. I got a guy in California, we just helped, they did a deal in Oklahoma, they bought I think an apartment complex. And he put 400,000 in, no, he's buying a restaurant, he bought it for 400,000. It was appraised for 700,000, he cashed back refi, got his 400,000 back with no tax issue. So anybody had the cash to put down up front to get the, buy the building. So it's all in equity.
Okay.
Any other ones? All right.
Thank you.
I've got just some talking points on paper that I wanted to hand out here. One for myself and can share it right there. Email.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm Mel Trissel. I'm with Simmons Bank. I'm a commercial real estate banker. That name might be new to you, Simmons Bank. We are the old Stillwater National Bank, Bank S&B, if you will, here in Oklahoma City. We're located at our corporate office is at 63rd and North Penn at the Waterford Complex. We've been there for 20 years when we first came into this market from Stillwater. Simmons bought us about a year and a half ago. They're based out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, of all places, but the corporate office is in Little Rock. We have an 8-state footprint. Those 8 states are Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, and Illinois. So we've got an 8-state regional footprint. Even though we're about $20 billion in assets, we consider ourselves a community bank. And so we are part of the Simmons Group now. Let me just run through the talking points in terms of commercial real estate lending. The first thing is, I guess the first thing I'd like to point out is there are kind of 3 general cornerstones that we consider when we look at new loan applications to build buildings or buy buildings, especially on the build side, the construction side. The 3 are, will it be built right? Will it be built on time? And will it be built within budget? Those are kind of the 3 cornerstones. And the building right involves your architect and your GC. The budget, of course, is kind of the same in that you have to create a budget that includes the entire cost to build the building. And then on time, that means lots of times tenants expect landlords to deliver spaces within a certain period of time. So you want to look at the lease agreement versus the contract to make sure those are in line. But those are kind of 3 general cornerstones that we look at. In terms of, I'll take the first point there, property types. We prefer income producing properties, and that's pretty much everything: office, retail, multifamily, industrial, student housing, and medical office. You You could add hospitality here, because as we were talking earlier, for our bank, we've become pretty cautious on hotels. We think we've got quite a few of them in our market, especially when you consider the new Omni that's coming online in a year or two. So those are the primary product types that we like to see. As far as the essential documents when you bring applications into us, we obviously like to see the project budget. We like to see the construction contract, and preferably on AIA forms, American Institute of Architect. Those are kind of standard form, professional forms in the industry. The general contractor financials, if it's a construction project. Title insurance, builder's risk insurance, liability insurance, and then all of the construction draws with invoices, proof of purchase, and lien waivers. So those are kind of the key documents that we'd like to see on construction projects. As far as the construction contract, we prefer GMAX, guaranteed max, of course, what that means, and it assures that we somehow kind of reduce the risk of overruns and change orders within the project, although those happen, but we prefer GMAX instead of, say, cost plus, because sometimes that can get out of hand pretty quickly. The larger construction loans may require a bond. The general contractor must be bondable and be able to provide proof of bonding amount. The bonds is really kind of an interesting line item within a budget. We try to avoid contract bonding because it is so expensive, and it's typically, unless it's changed recently, around 1% of the entire budget. So as you can see, it can add significant cost to the budget. We get around that one way by reviewing the contractor's financial statements, and if we can determine reasonably that they're bondable, meaning that they can take their financials and go to a company and receive a bond, then we're apt to forego the requirement in order to save costs within the budget. So bondable is kind of the buzzword. As long as they are, we're okay. As far as equity is concerned, we typically like to see 25 to 30%, depending on the project. We can go as low as 20, technically. In fact, we can even go to 15% equity on some owner-occupied projects. But typically, it's around 25 to 30%. The cash equity, we prefer to be contributed upfront prior to any loan proceeds, so that we know that their money's in, and then ours will follow. The construction period on construction loans are typically 12 to 24 months. We've got monthly interest-only payments. Typically, the interest expense during the construction and then the stabilization period is built within the budget itself. In other words, and it's kind of odd to think of this, but you don't, as long as your equity is injected first in, we will advance in the loan for your monthly interest payments. Very common, very common. Once the construction is completed and a CO certificate of occupancy has been issued, we always or commonly attach a 3 to 5 year mini-perm inter loan, and our amortizations are typically 20 to 25 years, and especially if it's a new project, 25 years is really common, and that's the competition out there in the market anyway. So 20, 25 year am after the construction period of interest only. As far as guarantees or recourse, we always look for a personal or corporate guarantee during the construction period, so that we know that they're attached to the project at least through completion. We can consider releasing or reducing those guarantees when the project stabilizes, leases up, in other words, and based on certain economic hurdles, such as, for example, we could say full recourse during the construction period, and you achieve a 90% occupancy and a 120 debt coverage ratio for 6 or 8 or 9 months, then we'll start reducing your guarantee. So that way we know that the project's being able to support itself. So we're less, we're okay with reducing personal recourse at some point. The development fee, preferably, is somewhere around 3 to 5% of the project. The funding of the development fee is based on the percentage of completion of work monthly over the term of the construction period. So the general thought there is, as the project advances on a percentage of completion, then the development fee is released to the developer at that time. It's kind of everyone remains on a pretty level field throughout the project. As far as the construction contingency, we've got in here a hard cost contingency. We typically like to see around 5% of the hard cost. Any unused contingency will not be funded on loan unless we agree and there's really justification to do so. There's also another contingency that we see, and I didn't put it on here, but it's soft cost contingency. So in other words, obviously the hard cost would be the building, the actual cost to build the building. The soft costs include architect fees, it includes the interest line, it includes those non-material building costs. And we normally like to see a contingency within those categories as well, because things change. As far as the monthly construction loan advances, the borrower and the general contractor submit pay applications. We like to see the supporting invoices, lien waivers, and any other general construction documentation that might apply to the project. We will order what is known as a down date title endorsement from the title company, and that just assures us that there's no liens being filed from the last time we actually pulled a down date endorsement. The bank will then employ a third-party licensed inspector to visit the project, meet with the superintendent, and provide a detailed report on the construction activity as well as the percentage of completion. The thought there is that, you know, we're bankers, we're not construction professionals. So we like to employ third-party companies or individuals that have experience in construction to really know what is going on, and so we can rely on their information. Okay, provided the supporting documentation matches, not marches, the completed work and the percentage of completion, we fund the request, advance it to the borrower. In this process of monthly construction, advance pay apps and inspections usually takes around 3 to 5 business days, so we absolutely don't want to delay that process, knowing that subs and GCs need to be paid. And the final area is change orders. We all understand that those things happen. We just want to be given the information by the owner, the borrower, the GC, and the bank. Change orders are typically funded by the borrower as additional equity, or we will need a special approval from the bank. And so there's generally 2 change orders that you have a good change order, let's call it, whereas the building needs to be expanded a little bit, which adds cash flow to the developer. Those are good change orders. There's also those change orders where there's cost overruns, and that's where the real issues start to begin that we need to talk about, so that those cost overruns don't get out of hand. That's kind of a general idea. Any questions?
Thanks, Mel. Anybody have questions?
What's the new Omni? You said new Omni?
Yeah, it's the new Scissortail Park, the new convention center on the east side of Scissortail. You're seeing the convention center, you're seeing the Omni Hotel, and there's a parking garage that links those 2 together. I'm hearing, you might know, 500, 600 rooms. Have you heard the size of the Omni?
I think so. Pascal, do you know? I think it's about, I think that sounds right,
Yes.
500 to 600 ranges.
Yeah.
It's triple the size of the normal hotels that are down at the capacity.
Yeah, you know, there's been lots of new hotel construction on the east side of Bricktown that extends on the other side of the highway. There's just a lot of new product, especially in this central area.
Before this project even kind of came to fruition, I would say about 8 years ago, they were showing that we needed 800 beds in downtown Oklahoma City to support the conventions and concerts and games that were coming into town. So that's why Omni came in with such a large, and you've seen, as Mel said, easily half a dozen hotels that have gone up.
I think that Omni project, I think the city has helped with some of the costs as part of the map. Maybe, I don't know if it was part of maps or otherwise, but
It was mass.
there's some public money involved in that project as well, because just of the desire for needing it in that area. It looked, have you been down there lately? Oh my gosh, it's so impressive. It makes you really feel like our city's growing up. It looks like a hotel that should be in Dallas or Kansas City or New York for that matter. It's really nice looking, modern. Okay, thank you.
You just have to use the little arrows.
Okay. So, do I load what I use thing?
It's there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you just hit the space bar of the arrows, the arrows. There you go.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so, to go to the next one.
So just, it's on the menu now, the first one, so you just go over it.
Click the down arrow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Elena Warren, and I am a retail commercial real estate broker with Pegasus. I've been practicing commercial real estate here in Oklahoma City for about 14 years, and I've been doing retail the whole time. And I'm just going to run through very summarized, quick review of the retail real estate process from our perspective. Okay. Very first thing that we always recommend is for the client to visit with a banker. It's very important to know what your budget is and what you qualify for, and it is important to know whether it makes sense for their business to either buy or lease. And that's not really something we can guide them on. It's more of an internal financial model if they visit with a banker. Highly recommend it. Knowing the criteria is extremely important before they come to us. We ask, who's your customer? Are they a certain age range? Where do they live? Are we trying to reach them near their work or by their home when they're buying groceries? Are they more likely to shop at Target or Walmart? Access, almost everybody wants great access, but you have to be willing to pay for it. It can be very expensive. Co-tenancy is, I think, underestimated. It's really important to understand where the customer is spending their time so that you know what other retailers or shopping center, banks, or large retailers they're going to be near. Almost everybody wants great exposure and visibility, but you have to be willing to pay more for it. It can be very expensive. Like an Edward Jones wouldn't need very much parking, but a restaurant would, and it's important to have an understanding of that. How much space they need, also construction, generally, what are the needs to make their space work, and of course their budget, like how much can we spend on rent or their mortgage for the whole team. It's the responsibility of the client to know what their restrictions are. We can guide them and we can direct them down to the planning and zoning department, and we know some things, like if you want to open a bar, you need to be 300 feet from a church or a school, but we don't know everything, and so the experts are generally downtown. So, highly recommend a consultation with a contractor because it's important to know, just have a general idea of how much things cost and how long things take. If they are in a lease and they want to build a building, they need to plan that out. If their lease expires in 6 months, they need to have a good understanding of that. When we meet with them, we sit down and go over their criteria. That is the absolute most important thing. Then we get to work. We look at flyers, property brochures, we email, we talk on the phone, we schedule a time to get together and go look at some space. We try to narrow it down a little bit before that. Windshield tour is something we do a lot in retail because the most important parts of the space aren't even on the inside, it's on the outside. So, then we evaluate in great detail. So the broker drafts a letter of intent. It's not legally binding, it's just the most important parts of the deal. The broker should be able to advise on that and guide what points you need to stick to. When a broker negotiates a letter of intent, the broker should advise on things to ask for or things to not ask for, things that might be insulting or something that is risky for the customer. The broker should know all of that. They should, if you're having a hard time reaching a win-win situation, the broker should have experience and be creative to come up with deal points that work for everybody. Lease negotiations, same thing, but a broker should have references for a good real estate attorney. I can definitely look through a lease well and find things that I think are risky or bad for the client, but coming up with that language to actually replace is definitely the attorney's job. If it's a sale, we highly recommend a letter of intent first. It's just more efficient unless it's a very competitive situation, then you can go right to a contract. And then the sale contract process, of course, that gets transferred over to the title company. The title company has a closer that manages the rest of that process. And the broker should stay in touch with the closer so they can advise if there's an expiration coming up, you do due diligence, or finding a surveyor or an engineer. The broker should have references to be able to put the client in touch with lots of people. So a lot of times our job ends whenever a sale closes or a lease is signed, but it really shouldn't stop there. The broker should be available to help afterwards. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, Lane, I'm gonna pick your brain here a little bit.
Okay.
What advice would you give, for example, me, as a lender presenting a loan to loan committee for approval that has a high percentage of retail, especially apparel? What sort of advice could you give to me to try to convince them that this is not as risky as you think it is, disregard this apparel? Is, you know, like we were talking earlier, the Amazon effect. What sort of advice could you give me? Because it's always a struggle, I'll tell you, it's always a struggle.
I like to err on the side of caution, so I don't know that I necessarily want to try to convince anybody to do a risky deal. I mean, if they have
But
experience.
what if it's not? What if it's a retailer that really has staying power,
Okay.
yet it's still heavily apparel? How do you convince a group that it's still okay?
Soft goods does better generally if they're around other soft goods. If they are not choosing their location well, that can have a huge effect on the success of their business. Soft goods generally just has got to be near other soft goods.
Okay.
And to me, that's the most important thing for them, and they need to work together rather than competing. And so that they can find other apparel users that are nearby that are even somewhat similar in their product category, that's actually very helpful. Just like restaurants that group together, it's very helpful rather than competitive. And so if you have a client and they are the lone person in the neighborhood shopping center and they're the only soft goods retailer, you just might advise them to take a second look at that. But if I were in your shoes, I would look at whether they're situated with others nearby, and that would be my best look at predicting.
Okay, thanks. And, you know, we get the financials, and we always try to look at financials, but,
Yeah.
you know, we had a situation about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we thought we had a rock-solid retailer. 100-year-old company, strong financials. They were around about a year later, and they were gone.
Were they new to the
It
market?
was Gordon's, yeah, they were gone. No, you know, it was Gordon's.
Well, but that's more of a company-wide, yeah.
They're
that's
a 100-year-old company, good financials, and it just
Yeah.
hit the.
Those are different. Those are hard to predict. That's the risk of real estate, unfortunately. When that happens, I mean, there's unfortunately a lot like that. But
And
if
that
it's a
could-
smaller one and you look at how they're situated, you're able to predict a little better.
Yeah. It's just like, our group is applying as to retail tenants. Kind of, there's a large concentration of oil and gas companies within an office building. They're really looking at that now,
Wow.
considering, well, are they going to be here next year or not? You know,
Right. Well, and if they have online sales as a component for their business model, that's another thing that works really well. If they have brick and mortar and online,
Okay.
those are the ones that are generally doing really well in the stores and online, is that they have both.
Are you
One or the
hearing-
other is not.
Are you hearing any retailers that are kind of at risk right now? Or any of them that we need to kind of watch out for?
Oh, no, because even if they do internal restructuring, sometimes that can be good. That can be good, but nothing.
So you don't see Amazon putting any retailers out of business for the moment?
No, it's going to continue. You have to, retail has to evolve. And if you don't evolve with the market, you are likely to die. So having an online component is a way to evolve with the market and grow with it. And some are resistant and they don't, and those are the ones that have a hard time. Like even like Best Buy, a lot of their sales are online, but there's a number of retailers that they are restructuring and remodeling, and like Nordstrom, right? They're always doing creative things that you hear about, and so just the ones that are stubborn, those are the probably not.
What's your thoughts versus mall versus strip centers?
It depends on the co-tenancy. Penn Square their sales are like double the national average per foot. They do very well.
For that particular mall is,
Yes, their sales are so high. They do awesome. But the retailers that are in there, a lot of them, it's their only location. And so it's special. And it appeals to high-end customers too, that are not far away in that area. So it's well placed, it's easily accessible. A lot of the retailers, that's the only one they have. And so it's the other ones that, have a hard time. But I don't think we have any other malls that maybe half the sales per foot. Those are the ones like, I would watch out Norman. Norman's kind of, Sooner Mall's not doing so great. They need to do some things because it's struggling, I think, as far as it's not growing and improving. They're likely to face vacancy. But Penn Square Mall's doing awesome.
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
You kind of hit on signage, and the retail stuff I've done, they've always wanted visibility, signage, parking. That's what the retailers want. They want those three things.
Right.
And then I